Welcome to Creamer Media's Polity. I'm Amy Witherden. I am at Idasa, an African Democracy Institute in Pretoria, to speak with Christele Diwouta about her paper on the criminalisation of the willful transmission of HIV. Christele, in your paper you outline numerous cases internationally in which the issue of willful transmission of HIV/AIDS was tried with widely varying outcomes. This shows that there is no concrete or universal standpoint on this issue. Why have there been such differing results to court cases on this matter?
One should understand the fact that there is no universal or blanket application in criminalizing willful transmission of HIV. Each country applies its own law, whether there is a law, a prescribed law targeting criminalization of willful transmission, or the criminal law of the country we are talking about is applied. So you have, for instance, the case that inspired us to write this article is the Nadia Benaissa case in Germany. In August of this year, she willfully infected a person with whom she was in a relationship without informing that person that she was knowingly living with HIV. So according to the laws of Germany, she has caused bodily harm to that person, and she was sentenced accordingly. You should note that there is the element of knowledge which was taken into account in this particular case. In the United States, for instance, they have a law that deals with willful transmission of HIV, but the outcome can also differ from one state to the other, and also according on the specific circumstances of each case. In legal matters, each case rests on its own merit. Each case rests on its own facts, so it's often difficult to compare cases, whether we are dealing with a case in America or South Africa, for instance. Just because one person has infected another one, the sentence should not be expected to be the same across the line. And there's also some factors that one has to take into account when reaching a judgment. There's the element of knowledge, as I said earlier. There's the fact that one has admitted that they willfully infected their sexual partners. And also there are aggravating circumstances, like in the case of Williams in the United States, where this person had sexual intercourse with several women, including minors. So this leads us to a case of statutory rape, which aggravates the sentence. There is the case of Stewart, again in the United States, where a father has infected his 11-month-old baby with contaminated blood, allegedly because he didn't want to pay for maintenance costs as he was divorcing the mother of his child. So again, there are many factors that one has to consider when dealing with willful transmission of HIV, and a universal application is simply not possible.
What role could the criminalisation of the willful transmission of HIV play in stemming the spread of the disease?
Well, regarding slowing down the spread of the disease, there are different schools of thought. Some people are for criminalizing willful transmission, others are against it. And for those that are the argument for, the first element is deterrence. The idea for that school of thought is to the effect that people should be deterred from infecting others knowingly. I will speak about the SADC because that's where we have done the research more closely. In the SADC region, there are three main arguments for those that are treating transmission as a crime. First of all, they base their argument on the high prevalences that we have in this region. You have countries such as Swaziland that are up to 30% of people living with HIV. You have other countries, they range between 15 and 30%, which is quite high as compared to the rest of the continent and the rest of the world. So for that reason, they are of the opinion that by criminalizing willful transmission, we are actually deterring people from infecting others. The other reason is the high rate of violence in this region. They believe that by criminalizing transmission of HIV, willful transmission of HIV, those that are more vulnerable, in this case mostly women in the SADC region, because of the violence that occurs in the SADC region, they will be protected from such cases of violence, namely women and children. And lastly, there is a call for government action in the region again. People are of the opinion that government are not doing enough. So there is a need for stricter laws, stricter penalties in order to curb the spread of HIV. So there are of course other reasons that can be argued as well. But these three would be the main arguments that those that are in favor of criminalizing HIV put forward.
What are the arguments against criminalization?
Some school of thoughts are of the opinion that it will further fuel stigma and discrimination. For instance, in the SADC region, like I said earlier on, there is a high HIV prevalence. So many people are living with HIV knowingly or unknowingly. So what happens in that case is that if someone comes out with their status, the risk is that they're automatically criminals in case they engage in sexual intercourse with another person. So they become like threats to the society. Many people might remain silent with their status and further spreading the disease. Another reason would be that from research that have been done on the topic before and even on other sexually transmitted infection, there is no difference in behavior in countries where there were stricter penalties as compared to countries where there were no or lesser penalties for people that infect others with HIV or any other sexually transmitted infection. Lastly, some scholars are of the opinion that it will further target vulnerable groups. We have people that have sex, men who have sex with other men. They are already a vulnerable group. When you factor in the AIDS and the HIV criminalization, you further stigmatize such group. You have migrant workers. You have a lot of people moving around in this region for economical reason or any other reason. So they are already a very weak group. And if you add the AIDS factor into that, then you are further stigmatizing them.
What is South Africa's legal position?
Well, at the moment, South Africa is cautious about creating a new law that will specifically deal with willful transmission of HIV. So at this stage, there is no law that deals with that specifically. What South Africa does at the moment, if such a case arises, is to use the criminal laws, the Sexual Offence Act of South Africa, to deal with the case. And in addition to that, willful transmission of HIV in South Africa is treated as rape if the perpetrator or the accused person knew that they were living with HIV and have infected another person.
The title of your paper includes the words "sitting on the fence." This implies that criminalization of the willful transmission of HIV is not a panacea to the epidemic. How would you combine the criminalization of the willful transmission of HIV with a more holistic approach to fighting the disease?
We've put "sitting on the fence" in the title just to bring out the fact that there is no consensus, there is no universal consensus, and even at national level, we can never apply a law as a blanket. So sitting on the fence simply means that there are different schools of thought, and we might deal with the same offense but have different results from the court. But at this stage, we would like to say that the argument is not really to criminalize willful transmission or not, but it's more to look at whether criminalizing HIV, willful transmission of HIV, would help in any way to curb the disease. And at this stage, there are no results of any research that can accurately prove to the fact that criminalizing will actually help reducing the rate at which HIV is going. So sitting on the fence simply means that there is a need to combine efforts. Those that believe that criminalizing would help should not isolate it from other activities that might actually help in curbing the disease. And by other activities, I mean more education, more awareness about HIV in the region and elsewhere. We have to target strategies that involve reduction of stigma and discrimination, especially of the weaker groups, women, men who have sex with men, migrant workers, and so on. There is a need to make healthcare services more accessible for all. And that includes not only women, because as you know, they are always the first to know about their status. Therefore, they are more vulnerable than any other group. But we should also factor in other parts of the society, those that live underground, namely injective drug users, people who have same-sex relationship, and so on. The healthcare facility should be open to all kinds of individuals for that purpose.